Hi, version 2.3 is out and we have gotten yet another version of Simulator Universe called Divergent Universe. This time, however, it's not an expansion, but rather a whole new game mode entirely. And because of that, we can now farm planet ornaments much faster than before. But that part of the game mode is pretty easy and self-explanatory. However, the other part called Threshold Protocol is not so easy as it is a harder version akin to Golden Gear's Conundrum and Some Disasters Torturous. So this video will go through the top 5 best teams and the best paths to help you easily get those free jades. Before we start, I'll be giving away 2 supply passes /Welcome Moon /Crystal Card to my subscribers at 5k subs, so make sure you subscribe to enter. A quick TLDR of Divergent Universe is simply that it is normal simulator universe. However, instead of choosing a path and trying to get as many blessings of that path as possible, you are more or less focusing on the equations, which are power-ups depending on blessings of different paths to help you clear. Additionally, there are also more blessings and domains like pre-existing ones such as adventures and rewards, but also new ones like escapades. And a few new mechanics to help bring down the luck factor just a bit like the workbench. However, before I begin, I do want to mention a few tips and tricks when it comes to this game mode. You could always just restart until you get the desired equations and blessings, and 2, do not be afraid to pivot mid-run. If you start getting a lot of blessings for another path, the workbenches are literally made for that, so make sure you use it. Like for example, you started off aiming for elation for follow-up attackers, but then you get a lot of hunt, so abuse the fact that teams can be changed and characters are pre-built for you so you can pivot. With all of that out of the way, at number 5 we have adventuring /depart with preservation. As always, one of the better teams in every SU content is a preservation focused team with shielders like Jeopard and now also adventuring. Pretty obviously, it's a path that increases shield strength and deals damage based on your shield. With the amount of shield you can receive from Jeopard and adventuring, it is with no doubt that you are able to output some incredible damage, albeit not as strong as other paths. But more than that, one of the biggest challenges in this game mode is how much the enemies hurt. Despite there being a slight nerf for the bosses, there is still no questioning how strong the enemies are, so having a shield with bigger health than all your teammates combined will definitely help you tremendously in clearing this content. Number 4, we have guilty units like Kafka with Nihility. Nihility is a path that likes to debuff enemies, and by debuff it, I mean killing them. With this path, you're able to get plenty of DOT damage increases and plenty of debuffs to make sure you destroy the enemies. Especially with Kafka proccing the DOTs that the path and other factors apply on demand, you're able to do absolutely massive damage against enemies despite it not being their turns. Which is why sometimes, without Kafka, this strat may feel a bit underwhelming, but overall it is still an incredible option to focus on. But with all that being said, there are 2 blessings I want to focus on that will be extremely good for this game mode, and that is this one and this one. Like I said for number 5, one of the biggest obstacles of this game mode is surviving. Being able to reduce the damage the enemies deal will be a huge contributing factor to make sure you survive this test. And the other one enabling you to heal during the enemy's turn, so that means that even if you do get hit, by the time the next enemy has a turn, you are healed up again, ready to tank the hits. Number 3, we have Akron with Erudition. To no one's surprise, one of the easiest pairing to hit the integer limit within this game will be in this list too. This combo is pretty self-explanatory. A unit that does an insane amount of damage on her ultimate, and using a path that focuses on buffing and increasing the frequency of the ultimate is basically a no-brainer. One of the key strats of this combination is getting the brain in a vat buff through the Erudition blessings. This basically enables Akron to just permanently ult off cooldown over and over again. And with the buffs that the blessings also give to ultimates activated by Brain in the Vats, pretty obviously you can see how far this build goes. However, I do want to mention the defensive utilities of this path is a bit weaker compared to the rest of the team/path combos, so obtaining equations or just blessings in general that will help in surviving will always be a good option. But with that being said, what if you just one-shot the enemies so you can sustain by killing them? Number 2, we have freeze units with Remembrance. As the number 1 option in all other SU game modes, it will of course make a reappearance in this one too. However, not at number 1 this time. The only reason why this is above number 3 is simply because how much easier it is to access compared to that. Because not everyone has an Akron, but everyone has a March and maybe a Jeopard too because he's part of the standard pool. this is what makes this combo rated higher than that. Anyways, about this strat itself, simply put, it is not really about your own units doing damage, but rather just letting the blessings do everything for you. The key blessings we're looking for in this combination are ones that help you freeze and ones to do with dislocation. Ultimately, all you're trying to do is to freeze the opponent, use dislocation to do 30% of their max HP and repeat. So the best units to use will be the ones that freeze without needing to break the opponent's weakness, and of course ones that break the enemy's weakness fast, especially ice units. And not units who actually do damage themselves, which altogether makes this a very free-to-play friendly option. And as for survivability, I mean, if the enemies can't attack, you can't die, you know? Before we get to number 1, I do want to highlight 2 honorable mentions. Abundance being one with someone like Blade or even Firefly will always be a safe options, especially since we have gotten these 2 absolutely insane equations that makes it all the better to use. And Hunt being the other one, just simply because of this equation that is very similar to the other SU's Hunt Resonance, which basically just kills all the enemies for you. And lastly, for number 1, Firefly/Brute with Destruction. As if Apocalypse the Shadow wasn't enough break propaganda, we now also have it for Divergent Universe. Putting that aside, Destruction was also a decent option in all other SU game modes. But it really was never a top option because it focused more on just making your units do a bit more damage and a bit more tankier. Basically evening the playing ground a bit so your characters still have to be very strong. But for this game mode, they decided to completely flip the path around to make it focus on buffing break damage and keeping the survivability. So now we have a path that is keeping you alive while also increasing breaks and super breaks, which is just in time for the 2 of the strongest DPSs as of this video. These blessings and equations actually help insanely with doing damage against enemies, especially these ones, and these will literally make you not die, especially if you have this one upgraded and use someone like Aventurine. So yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, all of these and actually other combos that are not included in this video too can be used to clear even the hardest protocol, as you can always just get a good run and get an abundance of blessings, no pun intended, and kind of just brute force through all the enemies. And of course, as I mentioned before, make sure you abuse the fact that you're able to change teammates at will and that every character is built for you. So don't be stuck trying to go for Erudition Akron and end up with a bunch of destruction blessings, because you could always just change your team into a Firefly team.